It is time for another episode of the Cultural Hall. As the music would tell you, it is an articles of news episode, and maybe in the back far corners of your mind, the reaches unreachable, and in at least in my mind, you've thought, where is Annette? Where is the Luthi Lion? Where has she been? She's been back from Finland for months, and we haven't
True.
really heard from her altogether that much. Well, she's here with us today. Welcome, Annette. How are you?
I am well. Thank you very much.
You know,
I
we call
was sick last week, I said, but I'm well now.
I made the unfortunate and very misogynistic joke of laryngitis and how a husband might appreciate it. Uh, it's not that funny, but it is a joke that I go to. It's the same. But I guess turnabout, and this actually leads to where I want to go with it. If you're offensive to all, does that make it less offensive?
That's a good question because, that reminds me of okay, quick story time.
Okay.
So my favorite professor in my BYU days was Dr. Oakes. In fact, his name was Dallin D. Oakes,
Okay.
son of the apostle.
Son of an Oaks.
Yes, he was one of the most hilarious, disheveled but most excellent teachers. Like I literally he would come to class like his hair's in a mess and he's like, oh, I forgot my notes, and he'd run back to his office, but then he would pick up exactly where he left off. My notes were in outline form. Brilliant teacher, but he was also hilarious, cracking jokes all the time. And he was teaching about the English language, this and that, and often he would give examples because he's a linguist. He would give examples. Oftentimes it's easy to get examples that are connected to things like restrooms, by toilet humor, because that changes through time and it's an easy way for people to understand. And he came to class one day and he said, it's come to my attention that some students are offended because of my potty humor. So here's the thing. There was a time I used to tell dumb blonde jokes and I had students coming to me said, Dr. Oakes, I'm blonde, I'm offended. So I told Polak jokes, and then a student came to me and said, I have Polish ancestry, I'm offended. And so I've decided to start telling cannibal jokes. So I figure until someone comes to me and says, Dr. Oakes, I'm a cannibal, I figure I'm in the clear. So he told cannibal jokes and it was delightful. Anyway, I passed a friend in the woods. Yeah. He was a clown. So that was one of his cannibal jokes.
This is the kind of stuff you can only get in the Cultural Hall, everybody.
You know, Dr. Oakes, I love that man.
Looking around, you're thinking, you know what, am I going to get a good dose of cannibal humor somewhere today? Yes, you will, from the Cultural Hall. That's what we're here for. Had an interesting conversation with my wife yesterday. She's like, well, I mean, what's the focus? What are you doing here? We have this conversation on the regular, as you can imagine, being espoused to me. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we just kind of do where the wind takes me. And she says, well, you know that's difficult for someone to be like, oh, this is a thing that I like listening to, like, unless they feel the same way that you do, or the wind carries them where it carries you. And I said, yeah, I know that's part of why, there have been other podcasts that have come about and have larger numbers because they seem to be more in focus and more in tune and, a little bit more niche. But we kind of talked about some of those things as to, okay, well, what really is the Cultural Hall then? Is it just my journey through the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Maybe, kinda. But it's also a place, I think, where we can talk about anything and everything about the church. I'm not sure if that's the great definition for it as well.
I think we do feel a niche that other, shows. We're the only real show and podcast from.
Thank you very much.
The podcasts. I think we are different in a lot of ways.
100%. But I don't know. But when I put it into words, I mean, we're not the only news show. There are a couple that exist. I would say we're by far the most humorous in the news space. I think others try to be sort of a little bit more, straightforward, or don't take a humorous bent on things. But then some people, as we mentioned at the very top of this episode, some people go, how could you joke around about? And that one particular thing they can't joke around about, but other things that you couldn't joke around about, they could. It's a very tricky wire with the Cultural Hall, which actually leads me to this review. We don't often get them, even though I ask for them and we deserve them. reviews of the show on Apple Podcasts, but we got one the other day. Says as follows. This is from Kimmer. 3 stars, by the way, from Kimmer. She says, ugh, why do we have to look for ways to be offended? It makes me crazy. I wish Richie would not have given the complainer any sound time. And then I wish he would have held his ground. Tell her not to listen if she doesn't want someone to be asked if they're being mothered when they visit home, like laundry being done or meals cooked, etc. Whatever. What a waste of an offense. And why the pandering? Which,
oh, goodness.
so if you listen to this episode, this is a news episode I did. You'll find a link to it in the show notes. A couple episodes ago where talking, well, I guess to go all the way back, talking about with Mr. Mayor, he was going home. He was with his mom. And I asked, hey, is your mom, is she mothering you while you're home? And in my mind, I'm thinking, when a kid flies the coop and then they come back, you sort of return to those original roles. So if you were the headstrong whatever, now you're the headstrong back in your childhood home.
Yeah.
Or if your mom did your laundry for you, then she does your laundry for you now. Well, Chow, who is also a co-host of the Cultural Hall, said, and I took offense, and mom's not a butler. You said that he was being mothered and it could just as much be fathered. And
Granted.
I contend that wasn't really what I was saying. I was sort of saying in a bigger picture, I wasn't assigning it a role or whatever.
And I think it's also a generational thing. You get boomer parents versus, younger parents. So, yeah.
So we brought it up. I allowed her the opportunity to say, this is why that didn't strike me the way that I liked it. I feel like I said, okay, well, I appreciate you sharing that. I don't feel like I was like, you're right, I'm horrible, and took out my lashes and, gave it to me, because I don't feel like that's what I was saying. But I think it's important to be aware about how our words are received by other people. And Kimmer hates it. Ugh, she says, ugh, with an H. Ugh.
I think it's worth showing other perspectives. That's kind of the point of what you've put together here, is different perspectives. Not that we have to agree, but that we can express them. And respond to them. That's valid.
And you point out something that I would like to take umbrage with. You said me. There are so many people that help out with the Cultural Hall, yourself, with all the stuff that you do on Instagram. And I'm not going to name around the circle, but there's so many people that make it even just a pleasant experience that I want to be any part of it. I love to be able to see what's on Matthew's mind, who does the Twitter. That's interesting. I wonder what got him caught on that particular thing right now. And, just to be able to visit and sort of follow people's lives as we get, we have days that then turn to months, that then turn to years, and to see what life is like. And sometimes it's really rewarding, and other times it's super heartbreaking, thinking, of course, of brother Kyle and everything that he's going through. Still with us, he would let you know, but it's not great. He's not doing well as was anticipated, but it doesn't make it any easier. And so, a lot of thought in the last couple of weeks about, like, what is it we're doing here? What is the point? What are we trying to accomplish here? So look for that to kind of evolve a little bit. What is new with you?
What is new with me? Earlier in June, I got to go to the Historical Novel Society Conference of North America in San Antonio this time. And I got to teach a class about, which is, would surprise no one if you know, about getting historical language right, but not too right. But there's a balance there. But so a cool thing that happened, though, so for one thing, it was San Antonio. So, of course, yes, I went to go see the Alamo. You can't go to San Antonio and not see the Alamo.
Did they show you
I
the
did
basement?
do that. The basement of the Alamo?
Yeah. 2 people will appreciate that. Move along.
Okay.
It's for me. It's for me and 2 people, and it's my favorite.
All right, that's the one I didn't.
But I'm glad to hear that you remembered the Alamo.
Yes, I remembered the Alamo. So 2 funny little things that happened. So one was, so my dad, of course, he's the retired professor of linguistics, which is how I inherited my word nerdiness. And I mentioned it to him, and he told me about a time he was in San Antonio for a conference, and he went to the Alamo as well. And So people in Utah, and you'll appreciate this. This is a very much Intermountain West way of saying things. We often, in fact, you've teased past hosts for this pronunciation of if there's a long A before an L, we tend to make it an E. So it's a yard sell. It's that kind of thing. It's
the big deal. I guess that's not the same thing, but that is a.
But yeah, we do a lot of like Hale Center Theater starts sounding like Hell Center, that kind of thing. So he's as a linguist, he was like, I was pretty sure I'd only ever heard that in the Intermountain West. And here I was though at the Alamo, and there's this little group of school children going on a tour, little field trip, and their teacher stops by the well and says, "Children, do you know what a well is?" And so a kid throws his hand up and he says, "It's a big fish." And he went, "Oh my goodness, either this child is from Utah, or that pronunciation has trickled somehow into Texas." But I thought that was funny. But the other thing that was kind of cool, and this is one of those things where you never know, a kind act can make someone's day, So some people may know who Chris Crow is. He is a professor at BYU. He is an award-winning novelist. He wrote I'm forgetting the title. It's the novel about the Emmett Till lynching.
Oh yeah,
like on Mississippi 1925, something like that, Mississippi trial. Anyway, it's read across the country. He's an amazing human being. I've heard him speak at the Storymakers Conference, and I learned why he wrote the book. It wasn't just some white dude trying to write a book about Black people. He actually has one, if not two, adopted daughters who are Black, and he was watching. One of them was a volleyball athlete, and after one game they lost, but everybody there was like, "That ref sucked." Just horrible, horrible calls. And as they were leaving, she said, sometimes it's hard not to know, was it just that the ref was a bad ref, or is it that he's racist? And Dr. Crow goes, "In that moment, I realized I don't understand my daughter. I had no idea that this is her regular life. That's a valid question." And so he started researching, and the result was this book. Like, he's such a cool guy. Anyway, so I've been aware of him. I've been a huge fan of his. When I was Whitney Awards president, one of his books won. I was thrilled about that. But I was pretty sure he had no idea who I was. But especially, with married names and all that. But he was at the conference in San Antonio as well. And at one point, I was walking down the hall, and it wasn't too busy at that point. And he was coming toward me and kind of waved at him. And he goes, "Hi, Annette." And I was like,
just drops.
Yeah. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, Chris Crow just said hi." And then I'm like, I'm wearing a name tag. Like, this is like saying, "Hi, Emily," to your waitress. Like duh. I'm like, okay, he doesn't really know who I am. But then later, I ended up sitting at the same table at a meal. And he looks at me and he says, "Did you know I took your father's linguistics class?" And I went, "Wow. Oh, he does know who I am." And then he goes off about Finland stuff and my mom, and then my sister I went, "Oh yeah, she was in his ward." Again, married names. I didn't know that he would have connected my sister with the rest of the family either. But I just thought, oh my gosh, Chris Crow does know who I am, and he took the time to talk to me and really let me know that. It was kind of a cool moment. I had no idea, and I don't know, it was cool. So be nice, and you never know. You never know when you're going to make someone's day like that. It's kind of a cool moment.
In the spirit of our conversation, it was a big deal.
It was a big deal. Exactly.
Big deal.
Big deal.
The other thing that I need to ask you, the historic novel, is that what was the conference?
The Historical Novel Society.
What I sort of think that is like, and I know that this is not it, but again, my mind goes here. What I hope that it's like is that the presenter in the front of the room takes out a book and opens it and just dust. That's what I hope every session of the Historical Novel Society is like.
Not remotely.
I found this book.
I attended stuff about like surgery, anesthesia, and painkillers through the ages, and cool stuff like that. And then actually one of the keynotes, actually two keynotes, interestingly enough, have Latter-day Saint connections. One was Jamie Ford, whose first book, Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet, won a Whitney Award back in the day. He's fantastic. That book is a World War II it deals with Japanese American internment camps and that kind of thing. He's got I'm forgetting because it deals with Japanese and Chinese, and his father's one or the other, and I'm forgetting which now. But fabulous book. So he spoke, and also Libby Grant also spoke, and she wrote a book. Oh, I'm forgetting. I'll have to look it up. But she wrote, it was about Brigham Young and polygamy. It's a novel. Anyway, but yeah, that was interesting too, to have 2 of the 3 keynotes, I believe. We have these Latter-day Saint connections.
That's incredible. Yeah. One other, I guess, piece of business before we take a break and then get into actual articles of news. We are going to start repurposing old episodes of the Cultural Hall with now more than 700 episodes. There are several of you who have not heard some of the very early ones. Maybe you have if you've become a Patreon saint by going to patreon.com/the Cultural Hall and started to pay a little money there. Encourage you to do that. It's a super easy way to get all of the archive episodes, but we're going to start bringing back on occasion those episodes from our past and need someone who might like to help us with that. Mostly, what you'll be doing is helping us decide which episodes deserve re-airing, and then the second part of that, if we need to jump into that episode and make sure that it won't get us canceled in the 21st century.
That it holds up today.
Yeah, that it holds up today. I can't imagine that there's very much, but I have had an opportunity to listen to 1 or 2 old ones, and I just
cringe a bit.
Yeah, now that I know better, I do better, I guess is the only way that I can think to explain that. And I think because there's so much time since from when we started, right, sort of on the heels of Prop 8, for example, like everything LGBTQ in the last 12 years since we started doing this, not completely changed, but has drastically changed. There's not anything in there that I think is like defamatory or anything like that. But I definitely think that it is worth an extra set of ears to go, I have questions about this. If you would like to be that extra set of ears, contact@theculturalhall.com.
And I hope you add numbers to the episodes that don't have numbers yet if you bring some of those back, because we have way more than 700 episodes because you weren't numbering articles of news back in the day.
Fair point.
Yeah, I think you should get credit.
Well, I think there's that. I think I'm also going to move in the future of not doing numbers.
Oh,
because I don't know. Do you care?
I don't know that it's a matter of caring. I think sometimes it's a matter of helping people find it.
Okay.
I know if I've been looking for an episode, sometimes I will Google it and use the episode number.
Okay. Fair point. So maybe we need to do numbers. Dang it! I thought I had a thing that I changed, and now I'm not. Well,
I could be wrong. I'm not an SEO expert. I don't know.
Yeah. Contact@theculturalhall.com. Let us know on all of those things. Send us the emails, won't you please? You've had it in your draft inbox. Just click send. Let me get it. It's always open. Let's take a break and come back and do actual articles of news. Here in the second half of articles of news, we do the actual articles of news. Hit it, Peter. And away we go. I thought this was interesting because I went, oh yeah, COVID's still a thing. Music and the spoken word this last Sunday, not live, pre-recorded. The choir recently in Mexico. Maybe COVID, I didn't look into this at all. Maybe COVID running rampant in the states of Mexico, country of Mexico. But several members of the choir said, nope, can't do it. So they said, nope, we're not doing this music and the spoken word thing, and played an already taped version of music and the spoken word. From everything that I've read, they will be back this Sunday. So should be fine. Other members expressed that they had gastrointestinal sickness while they were in Mexico, which just means they drank the water. In some of those places, I don't know if you've ever done that on a vacation where you go, oh no, my gut, I'm tough, I'm good, and then you just get into a place where the standards aren't the same, which isn't any sort of shade on the country of Mexico, etc. But it definitely can be a thing where if you do it one time, and even just briefly, and the rest of your vacation you know where every restroom is at all times. So I hope that
So
they
be
get feeling
wise.
better.
Yes, this is why a lot of people come off their missions from those areas if they get a parasite or something. Yeah, not cool.
This also with the Tabernacle Choir, just because we're there, they've announced who will be joining them for their summer concert series, the 14th and the 15th of July. It is going to be Adassa and Alex Melesio, maybe is how you say that, or Melesio. Not sure. Adassa performed the character of Dolores in Encanto, and Melesio was a finalist on a TV reality show that showcased Latino performers. They recently made that announcement, and so in the theme of having been in Mexico recently, bringing on some Latin saints, I think is a huge move, and you can be able to get those tickets while they last for free. If you just go to the Tabernacle Choir's website, you do that whole thing where if you're not there at the exact moment, then you have to wait in line and you'll never get tickets. But maybe someone in your ward, if you know someone who knows someone who knows someone, you can get tickets to that.
And
it's also interesting.
Sometimes you can get to the overflow, and you can go to the overflow sometimes, and it's broadcast there, which is
it's always worth going down
just to see
if you can, because I mean, what's worst case scenario? You spend a couple hours on Temple Square. I mean, I guess with everything being remodeled right now, but even the conference center and being able to wander down, or even non-religious being able to wander around downtown Salt Lake can be a great sort of religious experience because of so much having to do with the church down there. Where would you like to take us? What story?
Actually, I'm going back onto that because that's reminded me of a post on Facebook a friend of mine did. He's a writer, but also a member of the choir. He posted a picture, and I wasn't sure who it was, but it must have been that actress the singer who's going to be at the concert, because he captioned it with, "We didn't talk about Bruno." And so it was kind of fun. And so I'll actually see if I can get permission from him maybe I can post that to our Instagram. Kind of fun. Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to bring up that hasn't been mentioned yet, but as a writer, this is important to me. Anne Perry, beloved writer, Latter-day Saint, passed away in June. Or was it late March? I'm forgetting now.
Put her in context with me. Who's Anne Perry?
Yes, Anne Perry. She was English. She wrote a whole bunch of Victorian mystery novels.
Okay.
She was internationally famous. She had this huge career spanning into the 80s and then into the 90s. And then in the mid 90s, someone started digging into her past and discovered that when she was a teenager, and this did happen, unfortunately, she had some difficult things going on in her life, not an excuse, but she was a 14-year-old kid who was desperate to stay with her best friend, and one family was moving or the other. I'm forgetting the whole story, but they concocted a plan to kill her friend's mother, and they did. And so
spoiler.
So she ended up she served time. And once she was released from prison, she then found the missionaries and she was baptized, and she lived a very faithful life. But there's been a movie out that came out in the mid 90s, and since then people have she's known largely as the murderer who now writes murder stories. But I've heard her give a couple of keynote addresses, and she is the last one I heard her give. It was at Storymakers, which is an LDS themed writers conference. I mean, anyone can go, but it's run by the Latter-day Saint Writers Guild, basically. And as she spoke, it was like a fireside or a general conference talk for writers. I could have sat there all day. The spirit was so strong. I could just sat at her feet and just listened all day. And it was one of the few keynotes I have ever heard where she didn't talk about herself. Yeah. It was amazing. It was talking about just uplifting each other and using our talents and the way God would want us to. And just, I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. So I've seen some people bashing her. Oh, she was just a murderer. And I'm like, she was baptized after that, and the atonement is a thing. But so the New York Times had a whole obit about her, but also the Latter-day Saint Center or the Center for Latter-day Saint Arts also had an article. So we'll link to both of those that covers all of that, but also her amazing legacy. And she was just a remarkable woman. So,
that is someone I know very little about. In fact, the entirety of what I know about her is from what you just told me, but I mean, pretty intriguing to
Yeah,
know that.
she was an amazing, amazing woman. She really was.
Speaking of amazing women, yes. Did you hear that?
Nice
Segue?
segue, man.
The first Asian American to wear the Miss Utah crown. This just happened. Miss Utah 2023. She is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Sarah Sun, maybe soon. It's S-U-N, and sometimes I get a little tripped up on the pronunciation. She said her secret desire during the competition was to share her Latter-day Saint faith on the stage with judges and thousands of others watching. She said she was praying for a chance to share her testimony. She is a student at Cornell University, receiving a very secular and diverse education. Oftentimes asked about the church, but she never hesitated to seize the moment to share her beliefs. She's an incredible individual, and Utah is lucky to be able to have her representing the state of Utah, and the church is really lucky to be able to have her representing, in a way, the church on a national and even global scale. So pretty impressive. She since transferred to BYU. That's how she's obviously able to be Miss Utah. She wants to bring music into the prisons, whether it's through classes, workshops, or performances, to remind people of the shared humanity. That's something that has always been important to her. So I won't go too much further than that because we're working on getting her as a guest here in the Cultural Hall. I think that'll be something that people will really enjoy. But Sarah Sun, or Soon, congratulations and thanks for representing the church.
That's awesome.
What have you?
All right. So we've got, this is apparently you said that you mentioned that there was a book that she was on that you talked about in the hall about James Jesse String from Michigan. Mm-hmm. He called himself King String. I think it's String. It looks like strange without the E at the end. Yep. Member of the church eventually back in Joseph's time, kind of a weird dude. He wanted to be Joseph's successor. He went off and created his own group in Michigan, was a con man. He claimed that Ohio didn't exist when people were trying to sell, buy land and whatnot. Very strange situation. He ended up serving in the Michigan legislature at one point. Eventually he was assassinated. He claimed to have found a set of plates called the Plates of Laban, among other things, that sanctioned polygamy and ordered String to undergo a coronation to be named King James I. I mean, so there was a group called the Stringites in northern Michigan. So there's this whole, and apparently a whole book about it too. So that was news to me. So King James of Michigan, really wild connection to us.
The book is called King of Confidence, and we did an episode with the author Miles Harvey. It's episode 425. Links in the show notes. Yeah, a fascinating individual. Practiced polygamy. His wife didn't come with him when he would go and travel and preach places. He had his assistant, who was one of his wives or one of his women, and she would dress like a man, so that people wouldn't talk that he was with someone that wasn't his wife. It is the
article doesn't. I need to write that book then, because the article doesn't go into nearly that much detail. He talked about whipping women for disobeying and crap like that. But that's great.
And here's the thing: you sort of think that that it's just kind of this really super fringe group, which it is, and there are, I think, actually still some Stringites that exist today. Hold on, I'm going to type this in and tell you the names of the people who of the family of Joseph Smith followed James String. Some of Joseph Smith's family followed James String, thinking that he was the next one instead of Brigham Young, because remember, there's that
all the splinters.
All the splinter groups. I am pulling it up, and the internet has not failed me. After String was killed in 1856, most of his family was Joseph Smith rallied. No, that's not what I was looking for. Anyway, some of Joseph's immediate family followed James String and said, yeah, he's the guy. It may have been Joseph's mom. It's someone super close to Joseph Smith who for a time said, he's our guy, and then went, Oh, no. This is
Okay,
not the right
I'm gonna have
choice.
to look that up because I can't see Lucy Mack doing that, but we'll look. We'll have to go look at it. I'll have to read it and report
Episode
back.
425. It's Miles Harvey.
Look at
Find it in
Miles
the show
Harvey.
notes.
425. I'm writing that down.
Okay.
I know I've listened. I mean, I'm a lifer. I've listened to them all, but I'm not remembering that one offhand.
I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah.
Let's see. This I think is sort of interesting. This came out a couple weeks ago. This from the Temple Department. Family name cards not kept on file, but can be returned upon request. So
Yes.
Dumping in this a little bit. Do you know how to explain this in a way that I don't have to read this article?
Yeah. So the way they're trying to keep things pretty much online and just so people used to bring your old cards, you turn them in at the end of your session to the worker, and then when you were done, they would. And then it depended where each temple was a little different, but somewhere in the the family file office or somewhere like that, there would be a counter. You could then go pick up the card to bring home. And then that card, you just use the same card from the baptism, the confirmation, and carry it all the way through, so you could have all your cute little stamps and whatever,
like a passport to Celestial Kingdom. Got it.
Sort of, yeah. But now they're really that's a lot of extra work, and it's all online anyway. And so at this point, you turn it in, and then you walk away, and unless you actually want it, you have to go there and request to get the card back. But the goal right now is within an hour of getting home, you can go back onto Family Search, and it'll say, "Oh, work's been recorded, and here it is, and it's done." And then if you need another card for your next for the sealing or whatever the next ordinance is, you can print that out.
It seems to me like, and you'll forgive my temple ignorance because it's been a minute since I've been, can go. I appreciate everybody's judgment. I'm able to go. I just have not. It seems to me that it would all be electronic. Like, hey, here's my card, scan. I've just done ordinance, scan. And that it would be no need for paper at all.
Except that the paper is just there for this purpose of scanning. That's essentially, and that except unless you're and also just so people can know what names you're dealing with. So for if you're in the baptistry, it's like for on behalf or for this person, or whatever, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, so it's just there for the sake of the name, and also there's the barcode to scan it. So they're trying to simplify and make it less work this way for everybody, honestly. So
well, and imagine how many, just because something didn't get filed or didn't get filed right or wasn't corresponded with another network or system, how many times so and so was baptized or received their initiatories. I mean, we got to do the work for everybody.
Or people hanging on to temples, hanging on to cards just in case someone wants to come back and grab it, and then someone never does, or whatever. And one interesting thing too, and I know this, thanks to my husband working for Family Search, but you might want to check if you reserved names, family names before or during the pandemic. They usually expired within like 1 or 2 years. I'm forgetting exactly how long it was, but they put a hold on the expirations because obviously everything was closed down. So, but those now they've extended expiration, but they're starting to expire now. So if you've had some you thought were expired, they might not be. But they're probably about to be. So go in and check, and you can probably re-reserve them for another year or whatever. So just go in and check that out. It's so much easier now than it used to be. So
no excuses. That's
yes. Well, it's just well, it used to be that even back in the day, like it was like something like 20 something steps to get a name to the temple. And now you just log in and Family Search says, "Oh, by the way, here's one. Yeah, you want to print it? Sure." It's like
we already sent the message to your printer. You can go find it. We accessed your printer. It's printed. Go get it.
Yeah. So just very easy.
Here's just a kind of a quick one that I thought was interesting. In 2019, Elder Bednar of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles presented a $2 million donation on behalf of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to Michael Moore. No, not that Michael Moore.
Okay.
Then
I was going to ask.
He was the CEO of the International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina. The donation helped to build within the museum a Center for Family History, which is supported by Family Search International. The center is a new resource for the study and advancement of African American genealogy, and it's open and it's huge and it's awesome. And the church gave $2 million to be able to do that. So not only now is this museum just this pillar for the African-American community, but also people are able to go and do genealogical research there, and specifically for our, African-American brothers and sisters. Huge deal.
That is way cool.
I don't know that I don't remember talking about that donation back in 2019, which isn't to say that we didn't, but I just didn't remember that. And I thought that was worth noting.
That's
Super cool. Couple $1 million going to a great cause.
Very cool. All right. So also Center for Latter-day Saint Arts, they have their summer reading guide out, and it has a whole bunch of cool books. My book's in there too. Just throwing those really quick. So I'll have a link there. You can go and just see new books from Latter-day Saints. So it might be fun to read for the summertime. Another fun book that's out, Dallin D. Oaks, who I mentioned at the top. He has a new book out. And this is the way so we're friends on Facebook. He goes, I don't usually post things about my publications, but I will just mention here that I recently published a co-edited book on LDS naming with the international publisher, he goes, if you're interested, don't buy it, at least for a couple of years until the paperback comes out and the price is drastically lower. Because this is one of those academic things that's like $200 or something. But the idea is it goes into because the book is called Perspectives on Latter-day Saint Names and Naming. Names, Identity, and Belief. And it's the abstract I've read of it is fascinating. And it kind of makes me wonder, I'm wondering how much is going to go into why we name weird things today, like all the funky stuff that we see in the weird spellings. Guess we'll find out. But
connect me with Dallin D. Oaks. I'd love to visit with him. We'll talk.
I will. Okay,
with him.
We'll do
That'd be great. I want to know why we name Ashlands ACHUSCHYLYUNs. Why are those our Ashlands?
So here's a funny thing. So as a writer, I use inspiration from all over the place. And so Just One More, it's set in like a fictional version of the Wasatch Front. So I can I don't have to keep the map actually accurate or what businesses there are, but it's inspired by locations that are here. Mm-hmm. So I have a scene near the end of the book at a pizza place. I call it Heaps, which is what Brick Oven used to be called in Provo. Okay. Uh-huh. And I have the waitress named Emily, but it's spelled EMMALEIGH.
Perfect.
Just because I just was inside wink at Utah people will go, oh yeah, I know where she lives. So anyway, I had to do it. It was great.
Yeah, I appreciate stuff like that.
Yeah, I will talk to Dr. Oaks and see if.
Oh, I got to call him Dr. Oaks. Okay. Yeah. This big story, huge deal, significant, and I contend coming to a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here in the States shortly. For years, British members have been pushing church leaders for more effective standards to prevent sexual abuse. On Saturday, July 1st, many of their requests will become church policy throughout the United Kingdom. This is a win for activism, said Douglas Stilgo, a UK Latter-day Saint who runs the Nemo the Mormon podcast, which I've never heard of before. That's a thing I'm going to click on and look up a little bit. This is a win for engaged members saying, no, something's not right and we need to change it. Chief among the changes is that all church members who work with children will need to undergo a background check, or as they call it in the UK, the Disclosure and Barring Service.
And as we call it in the Culture Hall, what Richie's been calling for years.
Mm-hmm. A June 20th letter from the Europe North Area Presidency to male leaders in the area stated that the updated policies will introduce mandatory DBS, that's a Disclosure and Barring Service, for anyone who will serve with the children, youth, or vulnerable adults, ensuring that individuals with a history of violent or abusive behavior are not allowed to work with vulnerable people. In the link that you'll find in the show notes, you'll find a link to the actual letter itself. Here's the deal. People that will push against this will say, you know what? It's not going to fix everything. It's not going to make everything right. It's not going to, and on and on and on. But you know what it is? It is something, and it will weed out some people who shouldn't be serving with youth, with children, and with vulnerable adults.
If it protects a few, it's worth it.
Yeah, remember?
Absolutely.
The 99, the 1, come on. Yeah. So I thought that was a big deal. I'm looking at this Nemo the Mormon kind of podcast thing. I don't know. It's a lot of stuff. people that that follows it, but it seems as though maybe this is not fully let's see. To join us as we then follow him on a deeply personal journey to his friend. Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't seem, I can't tell if it's pro or con church. So it seems like maybe there's some questionable things there, but if that's what helped to get those things in place in the UK, worth it.
Yep, absolutely.
What
okay,
else have you?
So here's a quick one. I haven't watched it, but I think I'm planning on it. I've watched just a couple of opening minutes. But Brandon Sanderson, again, going into the writer, I think he's the fantasy writer.
You are so writing
I
me.
know. I'm so sorry. Sorry, not sorry. He had got an honorary doctorate degree of letters from Utah Valley University, and he was the keynote speaker at their commencement that took place on May 4th. Said the very first part of his speech, and I haven't listened to the whole thing. As he said, I was going to make a Star Wars joke, as May 4th is Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. But apparently earlier, someone else had already made that joke. So he goes, I was going to do that, but someone already beat me to it. So, but anyway, so I will link to that, and you can watch Brandon Sanderson's keynote. So kind of cool.
And the folks over at Slade said it's a boring talk. No, I'm just joking. Wasn't that the publication that interviewed him and said Slate?
Was it Slate?
Yeah, I don't know. But
there was Slate and Esquire, and I forget which one was the good article and which one was the bad one. But
did that
anyway.
whole thing, and we're just like, I don't know why. We don't know why people think he's so great.
He's boring. Yeah,
pretty boring.
No, he really is a remarkably generous soul. So, and he's so smart. So yeah, he's worth listening to.
BYU Pathway, an amazing arm of the church, providing education to folks all over the world at an affordable rate. People, whether they're returning to school or they're in various countries and just needing access to affordable education. It's what kind of works in conjunction a little bit with the Perpetual Education Fund, which we don't hear very much about anymore. It is now in Ethiopia as well. It's expanded to another African nation. There are more than 61,000 students that are enrolled. More than half are enrolled in the primary Pathway Connect program, with roughly 40% pursuing a certificate or online degree. It's incredible what the church is doing. In many ways, I think leading the way as far as what the future of education is going to be, especially as you see people get further and further disenchanted from you have to have a 4-year bachelor's degree or the postgraduate work in a master's. And there are some degrees, some fields where those are the table stakes to do it. But because you see the student loans out of whack like they are, because tuition has increased so much, in the next 10 years, the face of education post high school will completely change. And the church is on the forefront of it, doing just amazing things with BYU Pathway.
That's way cool. Let's see. So here's one that's church adjacent. I'm assuming that it's a scientific study from the University of Utah. So I'm assuming that at least one of the authors is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're going to pretend. It's called Space Dust as Earth's Sun Shield. And the idea was if they take dust from the moon and we're blow it into an orbit around the Earth, that could shield some of the rays from the sun and help fight global warming until we can find a better solution. There are a couple of scenarios they did, and use computer modeling, physics kind of thing. And at this point, it's just theoretical. So they said, the study only explores the potential impact of the strategy rather than evaluate whether these scenarios are logically feasible. We aren't experts in climate change or the rocket science needed to move mass from one place to another. We're just exploring different kinds of dust on a variety of orbits to see how effective this approach might be. We do not want to miss a game changer for such a critical problem. And then our strategy could be an option for addressing climate change if what we need is more time. So it's kind of an interesting little idea of like, well, what if? And let's explore and come up with think outside the box.
Yeah, if
outside the atmosphere
were a thing, Annette.
Right. Yeah.
I got so much snow this winter. Global warming? I don't think so.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Not this last winter.
Goodness.
More
Don't
like
get me started.
snowing, like never stop snowing. Global
Oh gosh,
warming.
I swear, seriously, I want to go. People who say that, I was like, do you understand how the water cycle works? The water has to go somewhere, you idiots.
Yep.
Anyway, okay.
She
I won't
said
go off on that.
lovingly. Idiots lovingly.
Lovingly, with all the love in my heart.
That's contact@theculturalhall.com, and you can just put attention.
Like, yeah, where was the Nat Luthi? Let's just get her back wherever she was. Okay. Yeah.
Let's
send her back to San Antonio.
This one I thought was kind of interesting, with just the other day, the church publishing the final of the Joseph Smith Papers project, the final print volume, that is. A couple things that are interesting. One is that there will continue to be updates to the website, because all of the Papers project is available online. You don't have to spend the literal thousands of dollars if you wanted to get those books. You can get everything that you would like online. But they did an article, a listicle, as I like to call it, the folks over at LDS Living, that shared, ready? 12 fascinating church history facts that are revealed through the Joseph Smith Papers project. And I'll go over them quickly because I just thought some of them were interesting. Some of them I think are just nothing, and they needed 12 because they said, hey, let's call this 12, and then had to fill it in.
Or they found 11 and realized that's an awkward number.
Yeah. People unrest with the number 11. Number one is that Joseph and Emma Smith had 11 children, not 12. There was, for a long time, it was thought that they had 12 children. You can read more about that. Link in the show notes. Joseph Smith was involved in around 200 legal cases in his life. Significant, maybe not. The early saints, going back to the story you just shared, were into reducing, reusing, and recycling long before it was cool. And you can read why they say that's something that we learned from the Joseph Smith Papers. This one probably most significant, especially for historians that we've had here in episodes of the Cultural Hall, publishing the previously unavailable Council of 50 Minutes ended speculation about what they contain. So for a long time, a lot of people think, oh, all the secrets of polygamy, because it was during the Council of 50 there in Nauvoo that polygamy started to come out, allegedly. And people were like, oh, it's shrouded in these secret things. So once they printed out the documents for people to be able to see, no longer was there the speculation of, oh, hey, this was what was in there. Number 5, the church's founding meeting was held in Fayette, not Manchester, New York. I thought that's significant. Historians acquired text for 2 revelations that they knew existed, but they had never read, which I thought was significant. An 1830 revelation dealing with the securing of the copyright of the Book of Mormon in Canada, and an 1832 revelation titled Sample of Pure Language. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, 2 that they knew about but had never read before. Number 7, Joseph Smith was generous almost to a fault. Number 8, the British saints donated even more than we thought to the Nauvoo temple construction. Again, all these things that we would not have known without the Joseph Smith Papers project. The revelation canonized as Doctrine and Covenants 49 was received on May 7th, 1831, not in March. So significant date change. I thought this was interesting. Joseph Smith's expedition from Ohio to Missouri in 1834 wasn't originally called Zion's Camp. They didn't start calling it Zion's Camp until after the fact. It was called, in the time that they did it, Camp of Israel. So I thought that was a significant difference. Joseph Smith's aspirations in visiting President Martin Van Buren were likely more humble than many people think. And finally, and most importantly, and how I knew that they had a number that they were trying to hit and wanted to include this one, we are able to know what the carpet looked like in Joseph and Emma Smith's home in Kirtland. Thank you to the Joseph Smith Papers project.
Actually, I would love to actually have a whole list of cool things along those lines, but that one doesn't fit the list. Yeah. That could be its own list of cool architectural stuff.
I mean, here's the thing. They've got in this article from LDS Living, which you can find in the show notes, sort of a sample of it. It's pretty cool. A lot of fun colors. I don't know why it's on a list with all the other of those.
I wonder if it was homemade, because a lot of carpets back then were homemade.
It was Venetian.
So it was Venetian?
Plaid Venetian.
Interesting. Because when the Logan Temple was built, and I'm a historian nerd, so I looked the stuff up. But the Logan Temple, actually the Relief Society worked for months to make enough carpet for it, and they didn't have time. And then they were ordering as much from the factories back east as they could, and so some of it was factory made, some of it was homemade. But they had this whole way of setting it up and whatnot. And the sad thing is when they completely like demolished the interior and then rebuilt it. So it was like, it's kind of like the Temple Knuckle in Provo, where just the exterior remained. Murals and the original carpet was lost. So now they have a little swatch on the wall to show what it was like. But it's kind of sad. Anyway,
same.
cool stuff.
Not the same.
Not the same.
How many more do you have?
Just two. One really quick one here is just we have a second edition, Preach My Gospel. Since I have not really studied the first one, I'm not sure what is new about it precisely. Except it sounds like the focus, of course, is helping people to come to Christ and all that. And so the final kind of summary, President Oaks taught in the final meeting. This was introduced to outgoing mission presidents, but also there was a video about it that President Nelson did for the whole membership. We can see. But President Oaks said in the final meeting of the seminar on June 25th, he said, everything in the gospel, quote, begins and ends with our understanding of the atonement of the Lord Jesus Christ. So I guess that's trying to make that sort of
more at the forefront,
the focus, I guess. I do say, so my daughter just got back from her mission, and she just gave a report on Sunday. And one thing that really touched me about that was that for her, I'd have to look at the new edition to see what it is. But for her, she said that the first lesson was about, it was basically God loves you. And she said for her, that's what the mission was about. Everything stems and goes back to the restoration happened because God loves you. We do this because God loves you. We have the Book of Mormon because God loves you. And so for her, a successful mission wasn't so much how many baptisms, how many converts, how many lessons, how many copies of the Book of Mormon did I give out. It was how many people, was I able to make someone feel God's love and to draw closer to Christ. So that's how she measured the success of her mission, which I think that's the success of a life in some ways. How can we help other people feel God's love? Let's do that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a far cry from how when I served my mission, where it was most people believe in a supreme being, even though we may call him by different names. We know this person to be God. And then you talked about Jesus, and then you talked about the apostasy, and then you talked about Joseph Smith, and then you talked about the reorganization of the church, and then you asked them to be baptized, all in the span of 45 minutes. And then our Preach My Gospel was this missionary guide, which I don't know how often that thing got updated, but the best part of that was, and I've got to think that those cassette tapes have been digitized and put up onto YouTube, but it's like, and this will seem extreme, and it's extreme for humorous purposes, but it would be, you would listen to this tape and you were supposed to have a discussion with your companion about it. And so it would be like, the Ramirez family is thinking about joining the church. And Elder, Smith, has invited them to be baptized. Should he, and then the examples are like, should he A, follow the Spirit and encourage them to lead a better life by following the example of Jesus Christ, B, kill them and then take care of them in the afterlife, or C, burn their house down and run out before they realize what's going on. Like the examples were so very obvious, and the discussion was so very like, the words just fail me to describe how exactly this was, and gone are those days, and I miss them. Yes. I miss them.
What? You miss them?
Yeah,
that's well, and I can see that can lead to people thinking that we're, again, violent people. Let's not do that. But also, I like the fact that, yes, missionaries report the work they're doing, but the focus on numbers isn't quite as intense, which I really, really appreciate, because every mission is different as far as, you go to, like, for example, I have a nephew who served in Argentina, and his wife served in Russia. And so he talks about, oh yeah, this 1 month we only had 4 baptisms. So you just stare at him and be like, wait, what now? Yeah. Like, cause like very completely different experiences. And like, I remember one time shortly after we returned from Finland, after my parents presided, There was a 70 who came, and apparently he had been like high up in the military back in the day, and he would just roast missionaries for not having more baptisms and numbers. And apparently he was known for, his wife would come and speak first and apologize for what her husband was about to say. And so we had missionaries who would come back that we knew, and they would come visit us and tell us these horrible things this man was saying, just totally just tearing the missionaries down.
Yeah.
And you should see like smoke coming out of my mom's ears. Like, these are like my children, kind of like, how dare they? And that was one of the first times I'm like, oh, it's okay to say that maybe our church leaders aren't 100% perfect, because this guy's out of line.
Yeah.
But
missing the point. Missing the
yeah.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's like for him as a military general or whatever he was, that's how you got stuff done. But numbers isn't where we change lives and hearts. It's just not.
Worth noting that the Preach My Gospel available now in your Gospel Library app. It's available in English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish. And if you like the print editions to do some notes in the
do that too.
And all that, not available till the end of the year. I think it's available in English,
Wow.
but in those other languages, not available yet. And then you had well, let me do this one. This sort of made the cycle through again. David Archuleta, we know, has stepped away from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. His mother, Lupe Bartholomew, has also decided to step away from the church and to join him. And I mean, this has been everywhere. You see in the picture that's associated with the article that we'll share in the show notes that she is wearing a Mama Dragons shirt. That's an organization that supports LGBTQ plus folks. I think within the church. We had them back in the cultural hall a long time ago to find out what they were about. Maybe it's worth having them back in to see if their mission and everything has changed. But an amazing organization to be supportive of LGBTQ stuff. But also I thought it was significant that this story made its way through the news again. It is significant to many that she left the church. And when she first did it, certainly a lot of people picked it up, said, hey, you know what, she left and he left and all that stuff. But it has yet taken another cycle with the news. And I shared on our Facebook page, and I would be curious to know what people thought about this as well. And I genuinely have no solidified opinion on this now presently, but it is a question that came to my mind: is could she fully support him? And we can remove the Archuletas because it's not specific to them. But could she fully support him and have stayed as a member, as a consistent member of the faith? Or is there something lacking if she did? Meaning, is it almost all support, or is it she's supporting an organization that he feels hurts him, and so, you know, gets sort of conflated with the organization, even though maybe she doesn't feel that way? Does she in fact have to leave the church in order to fully support her son? I don't know that I have a right or a wrong answer, but I would be curious. Contact theculturehall.com, or you can find that post on Facebook and be able to weigh in. It's a curious thought for me.
So yeah, my best friend actually is going through some of that herself, and at this point, she and her husband are still strong in the church and serving and all that. But it is a challenge, where she's got a couple of kids in that category, and various rainbow categories, and it's hard, obviously, because she wants her kids to know, I love you, I support you. I guess I will attend your gay wedding. I will, all that stuff. But it's the same time, I have a testimony, and I'm going to stay true to this. I have a feeling that change is coming. I don't know what it will look like.
Sure.
But like, so yeah, I think I mentioned. So the other thing I was going to bring up was related with Charlie Bird's coming forward. Those who don't know, he was, he's like the famous former Cosmo Cougar who did the big dancing and all of that, who has been openly gay for some time. He's written books for Deseret Book and whatnot, but recently came forward saying that he is now engaged to a gentleman. And And then he's the one who contacted Desert Book and said, hey, this is going to put you in a tough situation. How about you pull my books? So that was his call, which I thought was very kind of cool on his part.
It shows a significant amount of integrity, saying,
for sure,
you know what, I could continue to try and make the money by the sales of the book in your place, but maybe we don't align on this, and so I'm going to ask you to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mad respect. So I would highly recommend going to, he had a video on Instagram that I recommend watching. It's about 20 minutes long, but I think it's actually the part 2 that was the more powerful one that really stuck out to me, because he's handling this whole thing very differently from how David Archuleta and many others have. He's not stepping away. He's planning on still going to church, understanding that he won't be able to have a calling, that he won't be able to go to the temple anymore. But until he gets married, he says, I'm temple worthy.
Yep.
Until he marries this guy, which tells me he hasn't thrown the baby out with the bathwater, which I've seen. I totally understand why some people are like, if I can't be in, I guess I'm out. And being out means all of these other things. But he's not drinking. He's not sleeping with his fiance. He's not, if he's maintaining those covenants, and he says it's heartbreaking to think he can't be in the temple anymore after that. But he shares some very tender things that he has learned in the temple. And I keep thinking that there's more to it that we don't know.
Yep.
As far as eternal truths. I don't know what that will look like. I don't think a lot. I mean, like, there's certain things I think that that won't change. I do think that, but I think there's got to be a way to include these brothers and sisters that we haven't found yet. Yeah. There just has to be. So one thing I loved is that he actually said that his fiance comes to church with him all the time, but he's chronically late. So he goes, I save a seat for him, on a row in the cultural hall. And so he says, I just hope that whatever ward we end up in, they'll save me a seat. And I thought, hey,
we do that. We
do that
every time.
Like, we'll save you a seat, Charlie. We'll save you a seat. So I just have mad respect for him, because he is, if this is, he really broke down, actually, and it was very emotional to watch, and to say that, this is something that he feels like this is, if I can share my life with this person, it will help me even spiritually. I will grow and be happy, and not, the risk of suicide we see among gay young adults is so incredibly high.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the answers are, but I just am the fact that he's trying to navigate it. He's not walking away. Even though a lot of members will probably push him away and have judged him. And I hope he finds a ward that is welcoming and loving. I don't know. I don't have the answers, but props to Charlie Bird for trying to stay in such a hard situation.
His second book, which he actually narrated here in my studio, I want to make sure I can lead people to the proper title of it. There's Without the Mask. That's not the one I'm talking about. It is Expanding the Borders of Zion. Look at that. My name's even on here. That's cool. It is so good. It is anecdotal stories that he shares, different principles of his life, and heartbreaking when I had the opportunity to talk with him between, reading various chapters, and just to ask him, hey, you mentioned this in that chapter. Let me ask a little bit more about that. He's an amazing individual. So yeah, again, and here's the thing that's hard is the hardliners that say, well, he shouldn't have done that. Then we miss out on everything, all of the great things that Charlie Bird is, at the point that we go, nope, you don't have a star on your belly. This is the star belly sneeches right here.
Yeah. Well, it's one of my other daughter who served a mission in Alabama said that one thing that just kind of broke her heart and opened her mind a little bit, realizing she didn't know what the answer is either, but something's missing here. She said one of the best member missionaries they had was a gay man living with a man who he would introduce the gospel to so many people. He was sharing things. It was like he was on fire, but he didn't go to church because he knew that he wasn't welcome there. And she just was like, this is so sad, because he has a testimony, but he's also gay. And he's trying so hard to spread the love of the gospel and that truth. And yet he can't do so within to the, church unless he's alone. And,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
awful. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe civil marriages down the road would be okay. I can't imagine sealings actually happening, but
you don't know.
I don't know.
I couldn't have imagined 2-hour church, and yet here we are.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and another element too is
not exactly so very
I've got,
but I appreciate that.
I have one friend who recently walked away, not because she herself is LGBTQ, but because of those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because when she's described, I highly doubt she would listen to this, but hi, if you are, I think you'll know who I'm talking, if it's you. She's talked about, like, essentially she said that she was praying about these because it didn't feel right that we're treating people this way and this and that. And so she prayed and said, well, is this from you, God? Is this from you? And the answer was no. And so she's like, all right, I guess I'm walking out. And I was like, whoa. Like, if someone had prayed in 1978 saying, Heavenly Father, is it right that Black people don't have the priesthood? And the answer is no. Then the next step is not to leave the church. You know what I mean? Like, just have God say it's not okay the way we're treating our gay brothers and sisters is not equivalent to completely walking away. But that she was making that correlation.
Yeah.
And so yeah. Anyway, it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And who knows? Like you say, who knows? And that's the hard part for a lot of individuals is who does know and when and how. And when you see the suffering of people, I think that it is a natural thing to go, wait, why do they have to suffer? Why is this thing hard for them? Why does it have to be this way when that causes pain? And, we don't have the answers for that. And I want to go through some.
Yeah. I'm saying just hopefully what it takes, it will take probably years of answering questions or asking the questions, but we need our leaders to be asking those questions. And again, it might take 20, 30 years like it did for the priesthood. But they have to answer the questions before we get church-wide revelation. So let's pray for that, guys, that they'll ask those questions.
Put on your calendar October 22nd, 2023, because there will be a short pre-recorded message focusing on Jesus Christ that will be released. Its message should be shown at the beginning of a locally planned and hosted testimony meeting for the youth. Youth and leaders are then encouraged to gather at 7 p.m. local times on Sunday, October 22nd, to view the message and then share testimonies with one another. And if you share your experiences online, use the hashtag #AllThingsThroughChrist. That's significant, and put that on your calendar. Youth, I believe that's 11 to 18 youth. It might be young single adults, but I don't think so. I think it's youth. 11 to 18, October 22nd, 2023. If they tell you there's not a fireside, they're lying. This, if you like the murder things, the murder shows.
That's me.
There is on American Monster on ID. That's Investigation Discovery, the network. Emmett Corrigan, who was gunned down by his mistress's husband, rather, not long after his 5th child was born. Mormon connection. Raised in a big Mormon family, Ashley Harmon grows up wanting the same kind of lifestyle. She marries her college boyfriend, Emmett Corrigan, raises 5 kids while he opens his own law firm. But dirty secrets will soon trigger a deadly showdown. It's a real story. And you can find that on American Monster on Investigation Discovery. This is from about 12 years ago. It's not another of these stories that we've heard so much about recently. And then finally this. Let me get to the headline. Family history can improve psychological well-being of young adults, says a BYU study. Participating in family history research reduces students' anxiety by 20% and increases self-esteem by 8%. So
wow.
Is it just for the old people that don't have anything better to do? No. Reduce your anxiety and also increase your self-esteem. Find yourself to the Family Research Center at your stake, your neighborhood, or your local community today. We made it.
We did it.
I hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body.
We hope that if you are sick or afflicted, that you'll be able to listen next week.
And that when the time comes, you'll be able to travel home in safety. In the meantime, we'll be saving a seat for you
on the back row of the
cultural hall.